The text arrived on December 17th at 2:14 p.m., right as I was reviewing the budget proposal for our new climate change exhibition. Derek. Sarah, about New Year's Eve. Rebecca and I decided to keep it small this year. Just her political crowd. You understand? I set down my pen and read it again. My brother Derek, 2 years younger than me, had never been particularly subtle. But this felt pointed even for him. Me, I thought you said it was going to be a big celebration? You got engaged 2 months ago. Derek, it is big. But Rebecca's a congresswoman now. Her colleagues are coming. Other representatives, a senator, some major donors. She needs to make the right impression. You work at a museum gift shop or whatever. It's just not the same level. I sat back in my chair, looking around my office on the 3rd floor of the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. Through my window I could see the National Mall stretching toward the Capitol building. The same Capitol building where Derek's fiancée, Congresswoman Rebecca Chin, now worked. I see. Derek, don't be like that. We'll do dinner next month, just us. Rebecca wants to get to know you better. But this party is important for her career. You get it, right? I didn't respond. I had a meeting with the Secretary of the Smithsonian in 20 minutes to discuss our role in the upcoming International Museum Directors Summit. I had a keynote speech to finalize for the American Alliance of Museums conference in February. I had 17 curators waiting for my approval on various exhibition proposals. I didn't have time to explain to my younger brother that I was the executive director of one of the most prestigious museums in the world, overseeing a staff of 1,200 people, managing a budget of $180 million, and serving on 3 international boards dedicated to cultural preservation. He'd never asked what I actually did. Museum work had been sufficient explanation for him since I took this position 4 years ago. My assistant Jennifer knocked and entered. Dr. Mitchell, the secretary's office, just called. They're ready for you. Thanks, Jen. I grabbed my tablet with the summit proposal and stood. Everything okay? She asked, noticing my expression. Family, I said shortly. She nodded sympathetically. Jennifer had worked with me for 3 years. She'd fielded enough calls from Derek to know the dynamic. The meeting with the secretary went well. The International Museum Directors Summit would bring 50 of the world's most influential museum leaders to Washington in January. As the host institution director, I'd be coordinating the entire event. A significant responsibility and a massive opportunity to showcase American cultural leadership. The State Department is very interested in this, Secretary Williams said, leaning back in his chair. They see it as soft diplomacy. We'll have directors from the Louvre, the British Museum, the Hermitage, the National Palace Museum in Taiwan. Congresswoman Chen's office has already reached out asking to attend the opening reception. My head snapped up. Rebecca Chen? Yes. She chairs the House Subcommittee on Arts and Culture. Wants to meet the international delegates, discuss cultural exchange programs. He smiled. I understand she's engaged to your brother. Small world. Very small, I said carefully. I'll have my office coordinate with hers. The reception is January 14th. Mark your calendar, you'll be giving remarks and introducing the keynote speaker. I nodded, my mind already racing. January 14th. 3 weeks away. I didn't tell Derek about the summit. I didn't tell him that his fiancée would be touring the museum in an official capacity, meeting with me specifically. Some small, petty part of me wanted to see how this would unfold naturally. The larger part of me was just tired. Tired of explaining myself. Tired of being dismissed by my own family. Our parents had always favored Derek. The golden child, the charmer, the one who'd graduated from Georgetown Law and now worked at a prestigious firm in D.C. When I'd chosen to pursue museum studies and cultural anthropology, Mom had sighed and said, well, at least you'll have a nice quiet job. A nice quiet job. As if running one of the world's great museums was equivalent to filing paperwork in a back office. Derek had proposed to Rebecca on her election night in November. She'd won her congressional race by 18 points, flipping a traditionally red district. She was young, 36, ambitious, whip-smart, and already being mentioned as a rising star in the party. I'd met her exactly once at a family dinner Derek had organized in October. She'd been friendly but distracted, already in campaign mode. When Derek introduced me, he'd said, "This is my sister Sarah. She works at the Natural History Museum." "Oh, how nice," Rebecca had said, already turning to answer a call from her campaign manager. Museums are so important. That was the extent of our interaction. New Year's Eve came and went. I spent it at a small gathering hosted by the museum's chief curator, Dr. Patricia Okoye. Patricia's parties were legendary in the DC museum world. Intimate, intellectual, full of fascinating conversations with scholars, artists, and cultural leaders. I had far more interesting conversations there than I would have had at Derek's political networking event. On January 3rd, Jennifer came into my office with a peculiar expression. "Dr. Mitchell, I just got a call from Congresswoman Chen's office. They want to schedule a tour of the museum before the summit reception." "That's fine. Coordinate with the protocol office. They want a private tour. With you personally leading it." I looked up. "Me specifically?" Her chief of staff said the Congresswoman wants to understand the museum's operations at the highest level. She's very interested in museum leadership and cultural policy. Jennifer paused. "They requested January 13th at 10 a.m. The day before the summit." "Confirm it," I said. Jennifer hesitated. "Should I mention to her office that you're related to her fiancé?" "No," I said. "If it's relevant, I'm sure it will come up." The next 10 days were consumed with summit preparations. 50 museum directors meant 50 different egos, priorities, and expectations. The Louvre director wanted assurances about security. The British Museum director wanted a private meeting with the secretary. The director from the National Museum of China needed specific dietary accommodations for her entire delegation. I coordinated it all, supported by my exceptional staff. This was what I was good at. The complex logistics of cultural diplomacy, the delicate balance of honoring tradition while pushing innovation, the careful politics of the international museum world. On January 10th, Derek called. "Hey Sarah. Listen, Rebecca mentioned she's doing some tour at your museum next week." "Yes, January 13th. "Right. So the thing is, she doesn't know you work there. I mean, she knows you work at a museum, but she thinks you're like a coordinator or something. In the gift shop maybe." I said nothing. "Sarah. I'm here. I just don't want it to be weird. Maybe you could just not mention that we're related?" She's nervous about this summit thing, meeting all these international VIPs. I don't want her to feel awkward if she runs into you." "Runs into me," I repeated. "You know what I mean. Just keep it professional. Don't make it about family stuff." "Derek, do you actually know what I do at the museum?" "You work there. Museum stuff. Look, I gotta go. Just don't make things weird, okay?" He hung up. I sat there for a long moment, then pulled up the museum's website. My bio was prominently featured on the leadership page. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Executive Director Ph.D., Cultural Anthropology, Yale University former Deputy Director, Metropolitan Museum of Art Board Member, International Council of Museums Author, Cultural Preservation in the 21st Century, 2019 recipient, National Medal of Arts. There was a professional photograph of me at my desk, the museum's soaring atrium visible through the window behind me. Contact information. A detailed CV. Derek had never looked. Not once in 4 years. January 13th arrived cold and bright. I dressed carefully that morning. A tailored charcoal suit, minimal jewelry, my hair pulled back in a professional bun. I looked exactly like what I was. A senior executive in one of the world's most important cultural institutions. At 9:45 a.m. Jennifer briefed me. Congresswoman Chen's motorcade just arrived. Security is escorting her up. Her chief of staff, 2 aides and a press liaison. Press. They want photos of her with the international flags in the main hall. Good optics for her arts and culture subcommittee work. Of course. This was as much about her political profile as genuine interest in museums. At 9:58 a.m. my desk phone rang. Security. Dr. Mitchell, Congresswoman Chen's party is in the main lobby. Ready for you. I'll be right down. I took the elevator to the ground floor. The museum wasn't open to the public yet. We had an hour before the doors opened. The vast main hall was empty except for the security detail, Rebecca Chen and her staff. Rebecca looked polished and professional in a navy dress and blazer. She was speaking with her press liaison, gesturing toward the soaring architecture, clearly planning her photo angles. I approached quietly. Her chief of staff, a sharp-eyed man in his 40s, noticed me first. Dr. Mitchell, he said, extending his hand. Tom Bradford, Congresswoman Chen's chief of staff. Thank you for accommodating this tour. Of course. I shook his hand, then turned to Rebecca. Congresswoman Chen, welcome to the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Executive Director. Rebecca turned, her political smile in place. Dr. Mitchell, thank you so much for... She stopped. Her smile froze. Her eyes widened slightly. Mitchell, she said. Sarah Mitchell? Yes. As in, Derek's sister Sarah Mitchell? Yes. The silence that followed was profound. Tom Bradford looked confused. The aides exchanged glances. The press liaison kept her camera ready, uncertain whether to photograph this moment. I didn't realize. Rebecca's professional composure was cracking at the edges. Derek said you worked at a museum. He didn't mention that I run it? I finished gently. No, he wouldn't have mentioned that. He doesn't actually know what I do here. Rebecca's face cycled through several expressions. Embarrassment, confusion, realization. The executive director. You're the executive director of the Smithsonian Natural History Museum. One of 19 Smithsonian museums, yes. This is my primary responsibility. Tom Bradford, to his credit, recovered quickly. Congresswoman, shall we begin the tour? Dr. Mitchell has generously set aside 2 hours for us. Yes, Rebecca said, but she was still staring at me. Yes, of course. I led them through the museum, starting with the main exhibitions. I explained our mission. Research, education, preservation of 145 million specimens and artifacts representing the natural and cultural history of our world. I showed them our research facilities, where hundreds of scientists conducted groundbreaking work in biology, geology, anthropology, and paleontology. Rebecca asked intelligent questions. She was clearly well briefed on cultural policy issues, and despite her evident discomfort, she engaged professionally with the material. In the ocean hall, standing beneath the model of the North Atlantic right whale, I explained our role in climate change research and public education. We're not just a museum, I said. We're a research institution. Our scientists publish over 600 peer-reviewed papers annually. We advise Congress on environmental policy, cultural preservation, and scientific research funding. Congress, Rebecca repeated. You advise Congress? Yes. I've testified before the House Appropriations Committee 3 times in the past 2 years. Most recently on the importance of funding for cultural diplomacy programs. Tom Bradford made a note on his tablet. The Congresswoman chairs the subcommittee on arts and culture. I'm surprised your testimony didn't cross our desk. It may have, I said. I testified as Dr. Mitchell, Executive Director. Not as Derek's sister. Rebecca flinched. We continued to the anthropology collections. I showed them artifacts from every continent, explained our repatriation programs for indigenous cultural objects, discussed the ethical complexities of museum collections built during colonial periods. These are conversations the museum world is grappling with globally, I said. Which is why the International Museum Directors Summit is so important. We need to coordinate our approaches to decolonization, climate change, digital access, and cultural preservation. The summit, Rebecca said. That's tomorrow night. Yes. The opening reception is at the National Gallery, but we're hosting several working sessions here over the following 3 days. 50 directors from 32 countries. And you're coordinating this. I'm the host director, yes. I'll be giving opening remarks and moderating 2 of the panel discussions. We walked through the Butterfly Pavilion, the Hall of Fossils, the Human Origins exhibit. With each stop, I explained not just what visitors saw but the research behind it, the educational programming, the community outreach, the digital initiatives that brought our collections to millions of people worldwide. By the time we reached my office suite on the 3rd floor, Rebecca looked shell-shocked. Would you like to see where the administrative work happens? I asked. She nodded mutely. My office overlooked the National Mall. The walls were lined with books, anthropology texts, museum studies journals, cultural policy papers. My desk held neat stacks of reports, a framed photo of me receiving the National Medal of Arts from the President, and a small fossil ammonite my mentor had given me when I finished my PhD. This is where you work, Rebecca said, more to herself than to me. Yes. though I spend as much time in meetings at donor events testifying on the Hill, or visiting our research stations around the world. Tom Bradford was taking notes more frantically now. Congresswoman, this would be an excellent partnership opportunity. Dr. Mitchell's work aligns perfectly with your subcommittee priorities. Yes, Rebecca said faintly. I can see that. Jennifer knocked and entered. Dr. Mitchell, the secretary's office called. They need your input on the French delegation's request. Tell them I'll call back in 20 minutes. Also, the director of the Louvre would like to schedule a pre-summit call with you. This afternoon if possible. Jennifer nodded and left. Rebecca watched this exchange with increasing distress. The director of the Louvre, she repeated. You're coordinating with the director of the Louvre. Among others. The British Museum, the Hermitage, the Prado. It's part of the job. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. Tom Bradford and the aides were clearly sensing the personal undercurrent but professionally ignoring it. Congresswoman, Tom said carefully, we should probably discuss the reception tomorrow night. Protocol talking points which delegates you should prioritize meeting. Dr. Mitchell would be the person to ask about that, Rebecca said, her voice tight. Since she's organizing the entire event. And testifies before Congress. And runs a museum with 1,200 employees and a $180 million budget. And advises on cultural policy. And receives medals from the president. Rebecca, I said quietly. She looked at me and for the first time, I saw genuine distress beneath the professional facade. Could we have a moment? She asked Tom. Alone. Tom and the aides excused themselves. When the door closed, Rebecca sat down heavily in one of my office chairs. Derek told me you worked in a gift shop, she said. Derek doesn't know what I do. He's never asked. But you never corrected him. You never told him. He never gave me the opportunity. Every time we talk it's about him. His cases at the firm, his career, his achievements. My work is just background noise. Museum stuff. Rebecca closed her eyes. He uninvited you from New Year's Eve because he said you weren't at the right level to meet my colleagues. I know. Oh my God. She opened her eyes, looking horrified. My colleagues. Sarah, half the people at that party work on appropriations or cultural policy. They would have killed to meet you. Senator Williams was there. She's been trying to get a meeting with the Smithsonian about expanded funding. You could have connected her with the secretary. I had other plans, I said simply. I am so embarrassed. I can't even. She stood, paced to the window, looked out at the mall. What must you think of me? I think you're engaged to my brother and you believed what he told you about me. That's reasonable. It's not reasonable. I should have looked you up. We're getting married. I should know my future sister-in-law. I should have done basic research. He turned back to me. I'm good at research. I'm a congresswoman. I research everything. But I took Derek's word for it. He's very convincing. He's very wrong. Rebecca's voice was sharp now, anger creeping in. Not at me, at Derek. He told me you were sweet but kind of flaky. That you'd bounced around different jobs, never really settled into a career. That you worked at the museum in some entry-level position and seemed happy enough. I felt the familiar sting but kept my expression neutral. Derek has a narrative about me that makes sense to him. I stopped trying to correct it years ago. Why? Because it was exhausting. Because every time I tried to tell my family about my work, they changed the subject or minimized it. When I became deputy director at the Met, my mother said, "That's nice, dear, but when are you going to settle down and have children?" When I was appointed executive director here, Derek said, "Cool, so you're like a manager now?" Rebecca sat back down. "And when you got the National Medal of Arts?" I didn't tell them. They found out when my aunt saw it mentioned in the Washington Post. My mother called and asked why I hadn't invited them to the ceremony. I told her I had invited them. She'd marked it on her calendar as Sarah's work thing and forgotten about it. Jesus. It's fine. I've built a life that doesn't require their validation. I have colleagues who respect my work. I have friends who understand what I do. I have a career I'm proud of. I paused. What I don't have is a family that sees me clearly. But that's not your fault. No, but I'm marrying into that family. Which means I'm part of the problem if I don't acknowledge what's happening. Rebecca leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. Sarah, I need to be honest with you. The way Derek talks about you isn't just dismissive. It's condescending. I didn't see it before because I didn't have context. But now. Now you see that he's been lying. Has he been lying or does he genuinely not know? That was the question I'd been avoiding. Was Derek deliberately diminishing me, or was he simply so uninterested in my life that he'd never bothered to learn the truth? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe both. Rebecca stood. I need to make a call. May I use a private space? Jennifer can set you up in our small conference room. She nodded and left. Through my open door, I could hear her asking Tom to wait in the hallway. Then silence. I turned back to my computer trying to focus on the 17 emails that had arrived during the tour. But my hands were shaking slightly. This confrontation, if that's what it was, felt bigger than Derek and me. It felt like years of invisible labor, of achieving and achieving and achieving, only to have it all dismissed by the people who were supposed to celebrate me. 20 minutes later, Rebecca returned. Her eyes were red but her jaw was set. I called Derek, she said. I asked him what his sister does for a living. I waited. He said you work at a museum in some administrative role. Events coordination maybe. He wasn't sure. She laughed, but it was bitter. I asked him if he knew you have a PhD from Yale. He said, yeah, I think she mentioned that once. Some anthropology thing. I asked if he knew you were executive director. He said, director of what? Like a department. Rebecca. I asked him if he'd ever looked at your bio online, if he'd ever Googled you, if he'd ever asked a single substantive question about your work. She paused. He said he didn't need to because you'd always been open about working at the museum and he supported your choice to have a quiet career. The words hit like a physical blow. A quiet career. I told him the wedding is postponed, Rebecca said. I told him I can't marry someone who doesn't see his own sister. Who doesn't respect the women in his life enough to learn who they actually are. Who lies to himself about his family dynamics because it's easier than confronting his own prejudices. You don't have to do that, I said automatically. Yes, I do. Sarah, I'm a Congresswoman. I fight for women's rights, for equal recognition, for breaking glass ceilings. I can't do that in public while privately marrying a man who diminishes his brilliant sister because she doesn't fit his narrative of success. She smiled sadly. And I can't marry someone I don't respect. Right now, I don't respect Derek. He's more than this. Maybe. But this is what I see right now and it's enough to make me pause. He picked up her bag. I'm sorry for taking up so much of your time. The tour was incredible. This museum is lucky to have you. Thank you for coming. At the door she stopped. Tomorrow night at the reception, I'm going to introduce you to Senator Williams. And Representative Torres from the Arts and Culture Committee. And anyone else who should know what you do. If that's okay with you. It's okay, I said. Good. She paused again. I hope Derek figures his shit out. You deserve a brother who sees you. She left. The rest of the day passed in a blur of logistics and crisis management. A delegate from Japan had a medical emergency and needed to cancel. Could we arrange a virtual connection? The British Museum director wanted to change his panel assignment. The caterer needed final headcount numbers. At 7 p.m. Jennifer knocked. Dr. Mitchell, your brother is in the lobby. He's asking to see you. My stomach tightened. Tell him I'm in meetings. I did. He said he'll wait. I sighed. Fine. Send him up. Derek appeared 5 minutes later looking harried. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled. He'd clearly come straight from his law firm. Sarah, what the hell? He closed my office door. Rebecca called me today and postponed the wedding. She said it was because of you. It's because of you, I corrected. Because you don't know anything about my life. That's ridiculous. Of course I know about your life. You work here. You do museum stuff. You're happy. Derek, I'm the executive director. I run this museum. I have a staff of over 1,000 people. I manage a budget larger than most small colleges. I coordinate international cultural policy. I've testified before Congress. I received the National Medal of Arts from the President. He stared at me. The National Medal of Arts? 2 years ago. You were invited. You didn't come. I thought it was some work event. Some ceremony for museum employees. I didn't know it was. He trailed off, looking around my office as if seeing it for the first time. This is your office? You have a corner office. I have the executive director's office, yes. But you never told me you were in charge. I told you I was appointed executive director 4 years ago. You said, cool, so you're like a manager now? I said I was the chief executive officer of the museum. You said, that's great, sis, and changed the subject to a case you were working on. Derek sat down heavily. I don't remember that. I know you don't. That's the problem. We sat in silence. Through my window, the Washington Monument was illuminated against the night sky. Tourists walked the mall, tiny figures in the darkness. Rebecca said, I don't see you, Derek said finally. She said I've been condescending and dismissive. That I treat you like you're less than me. You do. I don't mean to. That doesn't make it hurt less. He rubbed his face. You're smarter than me. You always have been. You went to Yale. You got your PhD. You've accomplished all this. And I think I needed you to be less successful than me. To make me feel okay about my own career. The honesty surprised me. Derek. I'm not making excuses. I'm just trying to understand it myself. When we were kids, you were always the smart one, the talented one. Mom and Dad were always talking about your potential. And then you went into museum work and I thought you'd chosen something quieter. Something that wouldn't threaten me. I chose something I loved. I know. And you built something incredible. And instead of celebrating that, I diminished it because it was easier than admitting that my little sister surpassed me. He looked at me. Rebecca's right to postpone the wedding. I'm not ready to be married if I can't even see my own sister clearly. You could learn, I said. You could start asking questions. You could visit my work, meet my colleagues, understand what I do. Would you want that? After everything? I thought about it. Did I want Derek in my professional life? Did I want to risk him continuing to misunderstand or minimize? But he was my brother. The only sibling I had. And for the first time he seemed willing to actually try. Yes, I said. I'd want that. Okay. He stood. Hey. Tell me about tomorrow night. This summit thing. What are you doing? So I told him. I explained the International Museum Directors Summit, the reception at the National Gallery, the importance of cultural diplomacy in an increasingly fractured world. I told him about the directors I'd be hosting, the panels I'd be moderating, the statement we'd be releasing about museum collaboration on climate change research. He listened. Really listened. Can I come? He asked. To the reception tomorrow? It's invitation only. For government officials and cultural leaders. Rebecca could get me in. As her guest. If she's still speaking to me. He paused. I want to see you in your element. I want to see what I've been missing. I considered it. I'll ask the protocol office. If they approve it, you can come. Thank you. He left. I sat in my office for another hour, finishing emails and reviewing notes for tomorrow's reception. At 9 p.m. my phone rang. Hi, she said. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. It's fine. Derek told me he went to see you. He said it was hard. But good. It was both those things. He asked if I'd take him to the reception tomorrow. As my date. Even though we're not engaged anymore. She laughed softly. I think he's trying. He is. Whether it lasts is another question. True. But I told him I'd take him. On one condition: he has to read your entire bio online. Every publication, every project, every award. He has to actually know who you are before he walks into that event. Did he agree? He's reading right now. He called me 20 minutes ago to ask if you'd really testified before Congress. I told him to keep reading. I smiled despite myself. Thank you, Rebecca. For pushing him. Thank you for not hating me. I walked into your museum thinking I was doing you a favor by acknowledging your workplace. I'm mortified. You didn't know. Now you do. Tao I do, she agreed. See you tomorrow night, Dr. Mitchell. The International Museum Directors Summit reception was held at the National Gallery of Art, in the West Building's soaring rotunda. 200 guests, museum directors, cultural ministers, congressional representatives, ambassadors, arts leaders. The cream of the international cultural world, gathered in one of America's most beautiful spaces. I arrived early wearing a floor-length midnight blue gown that I'd purchased specifically for this event. My role tonight was both professional and diplomatic, welcoming guests, making introductions, ensuring that the right people connected with each other. The French delegation arrived first. The Louvre director, Martine Laurent, greeted me warmly. We'd worked together on a joint exhibition 3 years ago. "Sarah, the museum looks magnifique," she said, kissing both my cheeks. "This summit is already a triumph. Wait until you see the panel discussions. We have some fascinating provocations planned." She laughed. "I look forward to it." The other directors filtered in. Britain, Russia, China, Japan, Germany, Spain, Brazil, South Africa. Each one a leader in their field, each one responsible for preserving and presenting humanity's cultural heritage. And I was hosting them, coordinating them, leading them. At 7 p.m. Rebecca arrived with Derek. She wore a red dress that perfectly balanced professional and elegant. Derek wore a tuxedo and looked nervous. They approached me during a brief lull in greetings. "Dr. Mitchell," Rebecca said formally, then smiled. "You look incredible." "Thank you, Congresswoman. You both look wonderful." Derek stood there staring at me as if seeing a stranger. "Sarah, I read everything. Your bio, your publications, the articles about the Met appointment, the National Medal ceremony. I spent 4 hours reading about your career. And I'm an idiot. A complete idiot. All this time I thought I was the successful one in the family. I thought I was the one making important contributions. But you've been changing the world while I've been billing hours. Derek, your work matters too. Does it? I help corporations negotiate contracts. You preserve human history and advance cultural understanding between nations." He gestured around the rotunda. "These people are here because you organized this. Because they respect you. Because you're a leader in your field." The secretary of the Smithsonian approached before I could respond. "Dr. Mitchell, we're ready to begin. Could you take your place?" "Of course." I turned to Derek and Rebecca. "Enjoy the evening. We'll talk later." I walked to the small stage at the front of the rotunda. A microphone stood ready. 200 faces turned toward me expectantly. I took a breath and began. "Good evening and welcome to the opening reception of the International Museum Directors Summit. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Executive Director of the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History, and it's my profound honor to welcome you to Washington, D.C. I spoke for 8 minutes. I talked about the importance of museums in a changing world, about our responsibility to preserve the past while remaining relevant to the present, about the need for international collaboration on issues like repatriation, digital access, and climate change. I introduced the keynote speaker, the Director General of UNESCO, and stepped aside. For the next 2 hours I worked the room. I introduced the Japanese delegation to potential American donors. I connected the British Museum Director with congressional representatives interested in cultural funding. I facilitated a conversation between Russian and Ukrainian museum directors who needed to coordinate on a traveling exhibition despite their country's political tensions. This was what I did. This was who I was. At one point I saw Rebecca introducing Derek to Senator Williams. Derek looked overwhelmed but engaged. He was asking questions, actually listening to the answers. Near the end of the evening, Martine Laurent found me again. "Sarah, the European directors have been discussing something. We'd like to propose that next year's summit be a rotating event. And we'd like you to chair the organizing committee. Would you consider it?" Chair the organizing committee. It would mean coordinating with museums on 6 continents, managing a multi-year planning process, becoming the de facto leader of international museum collaboration. "I'd be honored," I said. After the reception, Derek and Rebecca waited for me in the lobby. "That was incredible," Derek said. "Watching you work, seeing how everyone respects you, how you commanded that room. I've never seen you like that." "That's because you've never looked." "I know. But I'm looking now." He paused. "Can we start over? Can I learn who you actually are?" I thought about it. About years of being dismissed, minimized, ignored. About the hurt that had accumulated like sediment, layer upon layer. But also about tonight. About Derek reading 4 hours of material about my life. About him showing up, trying to understand, willing to be uncomfortable. "We can start over," I said. "But it has to be real. You have to actually care, not just feel guilty." "I care. I promise I care." Rebecca watched this exchange with quiet satisfaction. I should let you two talk. But Sarah, call me next week? I'd love to discuss some cultural funding legislation. I think your expertise could be invaluable. I'd like that. She left. Derek and I stood in the empty lobby of the National Gallery, alone with the guards and the ghosts of centuries of art. Tell me about your work, Derek said. Really tell me. I want to understand. So I did. We sat on a bench beneath a Monet, and I told him about the challenges of modern museum leadership. The balance between education and entertainment. The ethical questions around repatriation. The excitement of new discoveries in our research collections. The satisfaction of watching a child's face light up in front of a dinosaur skeleton. He listened. He asked questions. Good questions, thoughtful questions. At midnight we finally left. He walked me to my car in the underground parking garage. I'm going to fix this, he said. Not just with you. With Rebecca too. I'm going to become someone worthy of both of you. Derek, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. Then I'll be present. Starting now. He hugged me. It was awkward, we hadn't hugged in years. But it was genuine. Over the next month Derek showed up. He came to the museum 3 times, taking tours with different curators, learning about various departments. He attended a public lecture I gave on cultural preservation. He read my book cover to cover and emailed me thoughtful questions about specific chapters. He also worked on himself. He started therapy addressing why he'd needed to diminish me. He had hard conversations with our parents about family dynamics and favoritism. Rebecca agreed to restart their relationship slowly. They had dinner once a week, no more. She made clear that her career was as important as his, that partnership meant equal respect, that she wouldn't tolerate being treated as less than. And Derek listened. He changed. It wasn't perfect or linear, but it was real. 3 months after the summit, Derek called me on a Saturday afternoon. Sarah, I just got off the phone with Mom. I told her about your work. Really told her. About the summit, about the UNESCO position, about everything. How did that go? She was shocked. She said she had no idea. I told her that was because nobody in the family ever asked you about your life. We just assumed we knew. What did she say? She cried. Then she asked for your phone number. Derek, she has my number. I know. But she wanted me to give it to her. Like getting it fresh would mean starting fresh. He paused. She wants to visit. To see your museum. To see your life. I felt something shift in my chest. Hope maybe. Or just exhaustion finally releasing. Hey, I said. Tell her to call me. I will. And Sarah? Thank you. For what? For giving me another chance. For not writing me off. For believing I could be better. You're my brother, I said simply. That's what family does. That's what family should do, he corrected. But hasn't always done. Not to you. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment looking out at the DC skyline. The museums were out there holding humanity's history, telling our stories, preserving what mattered. I'd spent years building a career that spoke for itself. I'd achieved everything I'd set out to achieve. But what I wanted most was simpler than all of that. I wanted to be seen. And finally, slowly, my family was starting to look. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined. It wasn't dramatic or definitive. But it was real. And real was enough.